Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about a narcissistic type person or people who have a fear of failure. And anybody can have a fear of failure. But this is just a certain type, and I could be wrong. Read the disclaimer in the description box below this video on YouTube. This is not advice or counseling or any of that. Just my opinion. And also what may have led up to this kind of person. Now this is a person, say when they were a child and they grew up in a very dysfunctional or narcissistic family. They were told things like, whenever they had, as a child, it could have been in their school too, by the way, anything, when they're a child, they were told to do as I say, okay? And it was strictly enforced. And they were discouraged of having any kind of independent thought. And they had a parent who was, you do as I tell you to do, and you only think the way I tell you to think. And whenever they would say, well, I think something different about that, they would get, punished for it, severe punishment even. And so now the type that may have grown up to be more narcissistic is the ones that's what they did. They totally minded, didn't, and were afraid to have their own thoughts on anything. Okay, because they were to be instructed on how to do everything. That's what they learned from this. But then what about the ones who are not? As you may have recognized yourself or realized that some people who are born in this, some turn out one way, some turn out another way. Some are narcissistic as they grow up, some are not. Now what about the ones who are not? They may have found a different way, like they were still told, do as I say, think as I tell you to think, and all this kind of stuff. But what they did, maybe they found a way of escapism, okay, from it. A way they may have learned how to keep it to themselves, and then maybe an example would be to read fiction, and go into that kind of fantasy world. Now, escapism isn't always a good thing, but sometimes it's not a bad thing. And they go into that world and they learn how to create. They become creative. Okay, they don't tell that abusive parent. They keep it in their own mind, or they might not tell anybody, because one of the other things that they may have felt was anytime they had a creative thought was ridicule. They were ridiculed for having it. They were punished. They were ridiculed. Ridicule is punishment also. But they were told, they were taught not to express their creativity, their thoughts, their fantasies. If they created something that's fictional, they were taught not to express it. Okay. But the thing about it is, they still grew. Even though they did not express it to other people, or may not have, or maybe they had friends that they did with, somebody else, where they knew they were safe. They weren't going to face this ridicule and punishment, or punishment. So they grew. Their minds grew. There was growth promoted there by, say, their friends. Now, the other ones who became more narcissistic, there wasn't. That they just became, this is how you do it. Little soldiers, some would say. So they were discouraged also from having any kind of independent thought. Both sides were told, you have to do what I say, and that's it. I think that is authoritative parenting style. I always get authoritative and authoritarian mixed up, so yeah, I think I need to think about that again. Authoritarian. Yeah. Anyway, and this often, from my experience, from what I've seen, it's, their other parent is very permissive, has a permissive parenting style. Anyway, so they're discouraged from having these independent thoughts. The narcissistic one, both sides. But the one develops, the ones that don't become narcissistic, they develop it through originally escaping, or just like, they may be told, much of their childhood, you're always daydreaming. What they're doing, they're being very creative. Okay, and the other ones, if you notice, these other ones, the ones that become more narcissistic, they're not very creative, independently creative. They may steal somebody's ideas, my pet peeve, that they steal other people's ideas change it up just a little bit, or just put their little own spin on it. But they didn't create it. They stole it from someone else, or borrowed. They would say borrowed, but they stole it. Okay, and while I'm on that part, now, like I said, when they were younger, these are often ridiculed for having independent thoughts or anything, any kind of creative thing, anything that is not what the domineering person told them to do. Okay. Now, whenever they steal people's ideas, say it failed, and they stole it from somebody else and it failed, and I think in part they do that on purpose. They steal people's others' ideas so they look like they're creative. But when they fail, they have somebody to blame it on. Now, they blame it on the person they stole it from, the victim, their victim. Well, I thought she knew what she was talking about. Her, now we all know what she's like. See, they're not going to accept blame. They're not going to say, hey, they stole that person's idea in the first place. So they set themselves up so they don't feel this failure, independent failure. I have written down some little notes, and I skipped this one, that one of the things that I had noticed about this type, when I was talking about escapism, that maybe the people who don't become narcissistic go into escapism by reading. I have never known this type to read, just for enjoyment. They have to read something for work, they'll do that, but they don't do it just for pleasure. They don't go into any kind of escapism such as that, reading, that where they can become creative, and they have to think past just what is there. Okay, I really haven't noticed any of them to just read, seriously. And I also have noticed that they lack hobbies. And I think part of that is because you have to be kind of, in some, you're creative in your hobbies, and just to create a hobby for yourself, they're just not very creative. Except for maybe if they find something that they enjoy doing, where they follow the leader. Okay, they're being told what to do. They follow the leader, and that can become their hobby. It can be work that becomes their hobby. But as far as work, well, I'm on that part. Their job is something where they're always told what to do. They're not encouraged to think independently. In some jobs, if you think independently and you do something your way, it could be very dangerous, or partially dangerous. It could be dangerous. So, yeah, you have to follow what they say. But many of them, I feel, they get into jobs where they just use somebody else's thoughts. And that could be, an instruction guide, manual on how they have to do it, protocols, all this stuff, that they're taught step by step what to do. Or it could be that they have to borrow other people's work in order to, in order to do whatever they do. Say, like a professor. Okay, they're having to borrow other people's work in order to teach, So, you see what I'm saying? Okay, I'm throwing out way too many things at once, right? But yeah, overall, these are people who, they learn not to risk failure. They copy what other people do. And in this sense, they don't grow. They don't have they stopped at the point, to me, when they were ridiculed and punished so much that it just kind of knocked it right out of them to have any independent thought or any creativity. They just decided that it's best to just follow and to copy. You follow the leader, do what they're told, copycat somebody else, along this line. And like I said, this is all my opinion. I could be wrong. I don't think so, though. But anyway, yeah, I could do something on that, too. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. So if you want to subscribe to this channel and you haven't already, click the circle icon that pops up. If you want to watch another video on this channel, you can click one of the rectangles that pop up. Like, subscribe, comment, and share on your own social media if you would. And I'll talk to you on another video. Bye. How long do you think it'll take before somebody steals this one? Just thought I'd add a little funny. Or is it funny?